Good morning and happy Monday. Welcome to another week here with movement and mindfulness with me. Yeah, hopefully you had a good weekend and you're ready and energized for the week ahead. Can't believe, again, we're halfway through the month of November. Um, how are you finding that so far, and what is your energy like going towards the end of the year? Have you even thought about that yet? Maybe not. I know for myself, I'm feeling pretty hopeful about what lies ahead. Yeah, and just sort of keeping that in mind as we move forward towards the sort of second half of what this movement and mindfulness has been all about. So we've done quite a lot of focus on breath work and the sort of anatomy of the breath. Now I'm kind of shifting gears a little bit and moving more into the anatomy of the body itself. So we kind of looked at the shoulder blade yesterday. Thought today we could have a little look at the spine, because this is a huge, uh, hugely important part of the body that we sometimes forget that we have. If we go back to what we were doing yesterday, so come on up to standing, and I want you to just kind of start to move your spine. So remembering that the spine um, starts at the head and actually ends at your tail. So you put your hand down there and put your other hand on the top of your head, because these are the two ends of your spine. And you could start to think about moving your spine around in whatever way that you can think of. And if you were to imagine, oh, people get lower back pain, they get mid back pain, neck pain, all of these complaints. If you were just to think, my spine is painful, it's stiff, it can't move, there's no movement there, and I hate to move my spine because I know that it's just going to bring me pain whenever I move it. Notice, just like with our shoulders yesterday, that doesn't really make you want to move your spine. But if you think, oh, actually, there's quite a lot of potential for movement in my spine, and it feels really good. It feels really nourishing to move my spine in all of these different directions because it's slippery, it's flexible, it can move all over the place really easily. Then that might just give you this more, just changing that little mindset around how your spine can move can have a huge impact on how your experience is to move your spine. And Joseph Pilates himself said, if you have a flexible spine at 60 years old, then you're young. If you have an inflexible spine at 30 years old, then you're old. So I always like to keep that little saying in mind because it's quite, he was really into you moving your spine in all these different directions. So I wanted to just give you a little picture of what your spine actually looks like. You can see the pelvis here. And then you've got the lower lumbar vertebra attached to your pelvis. You've got your 12 thoracic vertebrae, which are attached to your ribs. So you've been talking a lot about the rib cage, how it's flexible cartilage. And then you've got your 7 vertebrae up here in your neck. And you can see how the base of the skull is resting on your neck. So quite a really intricate structure, lots of muscles, lots of nerves running through and around that area. So let's just kind of talk about all the different movement that you have available in your spine. So if we think about, first of all, our spine is capable of bending forward. You can have just a little go at letting your spine fall forward as much as feels good for you this morning. Just starting to move the spine in a little, we call this forward flexion. So you might think of like flexing your arm, you're bending it towards yourself. And then we have going the other way, we call that extension. So you can bend your spine a little bit backward, and we call that going into extension of the spine. So now you can think, the crown of your head and your tail are kind of going in these directions back. So that's extension, and then we can go side to side. And we call this a lateral movement because we're moving sideways, laterally, into lateral flexion of the spine. So side to side. And then we can think you can move into rotation of the spine. So again, you've got all of these potential areas for moving your spine in these different ways. You've got your lower lumbar spine, which doesn't really like to move in rotation, but it can move into flexion and extension. You've got your thoracic vertebra, which love to move in this rotation, but kind of a little bit more limited into this movement into flexion and extension. But we want a lot of movement through this area because it makes up the majority of our spine. And remember, we have these really flexible ribs attached there. So we want that area to be nice and flexible. And then we've got the movement through the neck, which this is the area of our spine which likes to move the most. So you might just notice that, you can look quite a far way around rotating the spine. And you can really feel how it's, if you take your time to bend forward, you get quite a lot of this movement coming forward and then looking up, and you can feel that different movement through the neck, which is, yeah, that's quite interesting. So coming back to the center, we also have this movement where we can go transverse. So if you kind of think of the vertebra sliding side to side, so notice I'm not really bending, I'm actually sliding into this movement. This is another way that our spine can move. So we don't really kind of think of this one except for when we're doing like the cha-cha or salsa or some sort of dancing movement. So that's another way. We call this transverse. So a lot of information, but really it's just to give you this idea of all the different ways that your spine is capable of moving. Which is incredible. And again, it's like this intricate structure that we tend to underappreciate, undervalue, and limit ourselves through. So let's just take the hands back behind the back of the head. Think about growing that spinal column as long as possible now. Take a big deep breath in, and as you exhale, you're just going to tip your chin towards your chest and begin to roll forward. I want you to keep this space at the hips really open, so you're not folding at the hips just yet. Take a big deep breath as you're there. Stand down into your feet and roll all the way back up. We're going to do that twice more. Deep breath in, and actually you can let your elbows and your chest lift up towards the ceiling. We're coming into that extension, and then exhaling to roll forward into that little bit of flexion of the spine. Keeping those hips nice and open, facing forward, and then coming back up. Last time like that. And just notice, if you thought about dropping your tail slightly forward, you could come into a deeper curve through your spine. And then if you stood down through your feet, and you thought about sending your tail back towards the wall behind you, you could come into a deeper curve the other way. Make sure you're lifting your chest and your elbows up out of your, away from the floor, and then just come back to center. So now take your feet a little bit farther apart. We're going to begin to bend through one knee so that you can have a really deep stretch over to the side. So now we're getting this lovely deep curve through either side of the body. Notice you can have a lot more range of movement when you let your legs get involved, just stretching open through the sides of the body. Nice big deep breaths as you're moving here. Feels quite nice just to get all of that tissue at the side of the body to start to open. We'll just do one more to each side. come back to center, just bringing those feet back to center. You're going to bend the knees and rotate around to one side, and then straighten the legs to come back. So just getting a little bit more movement than what we started with. We're taking these movements into bigger versions of each of those. So feel how, again, how this movement can move through your legs all the way up to the crown of the head as you're spiraling around. We'll just do one more to each side. And then come back to the center. You're going to come to the top of your mat. I'm just going to move you down so you can see my mat here. Come to the top of the space in which you'll be working. And actually, we'll do one of these quintessential exercises of Pilates, which is a roll down. So you start standing tall, arms down by the side. Tip your chin down towards your chest to let your head and neck get really long. Keep your hips open for as long as possible and then fold through them. So you bend on down. Just shake everything out for a moment. Give yourself a little wriggle here. If you need to bend the knees, that's absolutely fine. Deep breath in, and then just let your hands find the floor and come to lying down on your back. Take those hands immediately back behind the back of the head. Going to really think about elongating the spine here again, nice and long. As you exhale, you're going to let the back of your body expand and get longer as you bring your gaze forward towards your knees. Take a deep breath in here, and then just exhale all the way down. So I want you to just notice as you're moving in and out of this position, what is happening through the lower part of your spine. So we're kind of using this movement to create length and create space through the back of the body. Feel how your back upper ribs are opening as you come up into this position. Your head and your neck are allowing the spine to grow longer here. We're also challenging the lower abdominal area a little bit, which is an extra added bonus. But if we think of the lower spine here, a lot of times what happens is that people want to pull their pelvis up towards them to kind of feel like this flattening out even more of the lower lumbar spine. See if you can keep just a tiny little curve there. You are going to have some snuggly like settling down of that lower lumbar spine as you come up, but really we don't want to feel like the pelvis is going to tilt up towards you and completely flatten that out. So a little bit of a curve there, not too much. And then just see if you can kind of bring a little bit more of yourself away from the floor just by kind of coming and wriggling at the top here. Once you get there, you're going to reach one arm forward, take hold of the backs of your legs, take a big breath in and see if you can come up a little bit higher, really lengthening the spine over here, and then place the hands back behind the back of the head and roll on down. We're going to do that 2 more times. Nice big deep breath in, exhaling to come up. Reach one arm forward and then the other. All the while we're doing this lovely flexion of the spine, bending forward, letting the back of the spine get nice and long. Replace the hands and come all the way back down. We'll do that one last time. One arm forward and then the other. Really lift and fill that space between the shoulder blades, and then exhale and we'll come back down to where you started. Really nice. That movement kind of forms a lot of the foundation for a lot of Pilates exercises that we'll have a little look at as we go along. Let's go ahead and lie onto the we'll come onto the side and place your, if you have some cushions, actually, let's place those beneath the head. I always say you don't need anything, but then I end up using some sort of equipment through my sessions. So if you have a cushion, just make your head comfortable here so it's in line with the rest of your body. You're going to extend one arm out in front of you, and we're just going to start to imagine that there's a little bar of soap into the bottom hand that you could size up, you could lather it up, and We had this image yesterday with the shoulder blades, but I want you to think of that bar of soap in your hand. It's got water on it. It's creating lots of bubbles. And you're going to take those bubbles over the bottom arm. You're going to start to rub those bubbles across the chest and take your bar of soap now that you have in your hand up towards the ceiling. Just let your gaze come onto that hand and slowly start to let the arm fall back behind you. So we're coming into this rotation of the spine. The legs stay heavy. You're only going as far back as feels good for your spine today. Take a deep breath in and then exhale and come all the way back around. So important to keep the legs stacked nice and heavy here. Suds your soap back up and then start to take it over the arm, over the chest. Bring your bar of soap up towards the ceiling and then slowly begin to unwind back behind you. Nice big deep breath in here. Maybe you're sighing. Your exhalation could take you down a bit farther to the ground behind you. And then begin to think about these lower ribs here. Actually, your knee will drive your lower ribs to come back. That'll just influence your arm to start to wind back around. So now we're thinking of how the whole spine is involved. One more time, we'll take it across the chest, up towards the ceiling, and start to sink back. And then we'll really think about the whole spine here. So use your tail kind of moving towards your knees to let the lumbar spine start to just turn a little bit. And that will influence those bottom ribs, mid ribs, top ribs, the head and the neck, or the neck and the head just follow you back. So let's go and do the other side. I'm going to flip around. You could just turn over on your mat if you wanted to. One arm out in front, stacking the shoulders, stacking the hips, and then just sudsing up your soap into your hand so that we can come into our lovely rotation of the spine on this side. This exercise is called book opening because you could imagine that as you bring your arm up towards the ceiling, you're like a book that's half open, and then you just let the spine of the book rest on to the floor as you open up the pages out behind you. Nice big deep breath in here. Exhaling might help you to bring that arm back a little bit more easily. We'll do that twice more. Sudsing up your soap, taking the suds across the body, up towards the ceiling, and back towards the back of the room. And bring it on back. Think of the tail coming towards the knees, and that'll let the rest of the spine just follow. Last time like that. Maybe staying here for a breath or two just to see if the exhalation can open up your spine into rotation a little bit more. And then you use the breath to help and assist you. Coming back to the center and then lying over onto your belly. So you can use your cushions underneath your head here if you want to just rest your head down. Let your arms be nice and wide into a sort of, let's keep them in a sphinx-like position. So your elbows are kind of in line with your shoulders. Your hands are pointing straight ahead. And we're going to think about using the breath to assist us to coming up into this little extension of the spine. So extending the top part of the spine. Notice that my tail is sliding up. If you think about sliding your tail kind of down towards your heels, that can help you with just finding a little bit more length here. And then coming back down, just resting the head onto your pillow, letting the spine completely relax, and then using that breath to help you to start to come up. You use your hands sliding, not actually moving, but thinking of sliding towards the wall in front of you. That can give you just this little bit more lift, which is quite nice. And then come back down. We'll do that one more time. And then coming back down, press yourself back into child's pose. If you want to create some space for your the front of your body just to hang down, you can widen the knees and take your arms out long in front of you. Nice big deep breath here. I'm going to walk the hands over to the right hand side and really let your left sitting bone sit down towards your left heel, let your left arm have a little reach without over kind of extending through that shoulder. So just let it rest comfortably, but still with some length through it as we breathe, and let the spine just settle into this lateral flexion, this side movement. And then walk the hands back through the center, over to the other side, into your lateral flexion on this side, sinking that right sitting bone back towards the heels, reaching forward with that right hand. And then coming back up to center, and just coming into your seated position. Make yourself comfortable here. Again, you can be seated in a chair if it's really uncomfortable for you to be seated on the floor. I like to just make myself as comfortable as possible, bringing a couple of cushions underneath me and under either leg here. So you're just going to check in. Maybe just allow the eyes to close and feel what it's like to sit here over your legs with the spine. So how does the spine feel now that you know it can move in all these different directions? And it can be flexible, and it can be moved and taken in, there's different parts of the spine that can move in different ways. So just let that kind of sink in to your mind and your body for a moment. And as we scan down through, we'll scan down through the back of the body this morning, just really envisioning and taking into our mind what the back of the body looks like, the shape of it, and again, just its sort of potential for length and movement. So start at the crown of the head. If you scan on down through the back of the head, you'll come to the base of the skull, which is supported by the first vertebra of your cervical spine, which is the vertebra of the neck. And you start to walk on down through the sixth vertebra beneath it in your cervical spines, vertebra of the neck. They're nice and mobile, they can move quite easily. And they do a good job of supporting you, holding your neck up in space. Then you could walk on down, scan through the 12 vertebra of the thoracic spine, so the part of your spine which is attached to each one of your 12 ribs. Remembering that this is also a flexible part of the spine, not as flexible as the neck, but we've got a lot of really important things going on through this area because a lot of our organs are attached to this part of the spine. Scanning on down through those 12 vertebrae through to the lumbar spine, those 5 big blocky vertebrae that form the foundation of your spine. They don't move as much as the other parts, and if you've had surgery or operations in this area, you might have even less movement there. So really important for you to think about moving the rest of your spine really well and really taking advantage of the potential for movement through the rest of the spine. And then just thinking on down to the base of the spine, which is the sacrum attached to the pelvis. So taking a couple breaths, letting your spine just settle and get comfortable and relaxed. And then we'll start to focus in on the breath itself, coming in through the nose and out through the nose. You can count your breaths so that as we sit in 5 minutes of silence, you can focus your mind exclusively on your counting of your breath from 1 to 10, and then starting back over at 1 again. And we'll start that 5 minutes of silence now. And then just beginning to bring your awareness back into the space around you, keeping your eyes closed for the moment, but moving through your wrists, your hands, maybe the shoulders, and through the neck. Excuse me. And taking just 3 lovely deep breaths. Just letting the air sigh out. And then just opening the eyes and moving through the rest of your Monday with this idea of how we can move with real flexibility and ease through the spine. And changing our mindset around that movement can really have a huge impact on how we're feeling too. So hopefully that's been useful to you. I go through a lot more of that in my 10-week program. So if you're interested at all in that, feel free to ask me any questions. And I'll see you tomorrow again, same time, 7:30. I look forward to it. Have a great day.